once again, the United States and Iran traded strikes overnight. Marks the 10th consecutive night that's happened. These continued attacks coming hours after President Trump responded to the deaths of U.S. service members by warning on social media, quote, every time Iran kills an American soldier, they will pay for that killing many times over. Iran once again, in return, targeted U.S. bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan, and also attacked a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, forcing its crew to abandon the ship. As for how long this back and forth may continue, the Washington Post reports that Iran's government is unlikely to feel significant impact or soften its negotiating position as a result of new rounds of U.S. military strikes. That's according to a new intelligence assessment described by current and former U.S. officials who add analysts said American spy agencies also have concluded that Tehran and Washington are, at least for now, stuck in an indefinite limbo between war and peace. Meanwhile, in another potential escalation, the Iran-backed Houthi group in Yemen declared a blockade on Saudi shipping in response to a Saudi strike, threatening to close a choke point at the southern end of the Red Sea to Saudi ships. If they follow through, the move could worsen the global fuel crisis and further raise fears of a wider war. It comes as the Pentagon has now identified the two fallen soldiers in Jordan as 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan of Hawaii and 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez of Texas. The youngest service member to be killed since the war began, Private Gonzalez finished high school just over a year ago. She joined the Army after graduation. Her former roommate told the New York Times, quote, she was always dancing all the time, especially if I woke up and I was in a bad mood, she would start dancing. Lieutenant Feehan, described by friends to the Times as charismatic, competitive, and a leader, had graduated from Southern Utah University and was just weeks away from earning an MBA at school. The Army said Lieutenant Feehan would receive the Bronze Star and the Purple Star and the Combat Action Badge, and that he would be posthumously promoted to captain. Our thoughts are with their families. Nearly 100 American service members have also suffered some level of injury, though, since July 7th, as the U.S. and Iran ramp up attacks. That's according to Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell, who added that the vast majority of those injuries were minor concussions, in his words, that most members have returned to duty. That update from the Pentagon comes after the New York Times reported that in the week leading up to the Iranian attack in Jordan that killed 2 U.S. soldiers and left 1 missing, Iran carried out 3 other strikes against U.S. forces in the country. Officials tell the Times those attacks injured dozens of U.S. service members and damaged several helicopters. The paper adds the Pentagon had not disclosed those earlier strikes, nor the casualties and damage they inflicted. Parnell pushed back and denied any concealment, calling such claims fabrications. 6 months into this war with Iran, and Republicans are showing little interest in requiring the president to get congressional approval for the continued fighting. The deadline for Trump to obtain congressional approval for the war has long since passed. And now many Republicans are backing a legal argument that could allow U.S. military operations to continue beyond the War Power Resolution's 90-day limit. It's 60 days of active fighting, and then 30 days to basically allow the president some flexibility in getting troops out. Some Republicans are accepting the administration's argument that a weeks-long ceasefire reset the clock by creating a new conflict. They include Congressman Michael McCaul of Texas, who says Republicans are trying to give Trump, quote, flexibility. Democrats say the position is little more than an attempt to sidestep Congress. Last month, senators adopted a resolution already approved by the House calling for an end to hostilities. But the enforceability of that measure, which didn't require a presidential signature, remains very much in question. It's far from the only thing I've got questions about. Staff writer at The Atlantic here, covering national security and the Defense Department, Nancy Youssef, thankfully is with us to start the day. And I think, you read these updates, you hear about these 2 young people who we've lost now. They are part of an unfortunately seemingly growing list. And it all begs the question, 10 consecutive nights of strikes, are we back at war?
Well, you're absolutely right to ask the question because we're seeing all the signs of it. It's not just 10 days of consecutive strikes, but an escalation in terms of what the United States is targeting, moving from the assets that Iran used to close the Strait of Hormuz to civilian infrastructure that it says is being dual used. You talked about the service members who were killed. That's more than were killed in all since February than in the years 2016, 2017, and 2018 individually in Afghanistan. And the United States has announced a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. So Those are all signs of war and certainly suggests it. I think the reason people have questions is we haven't had some of the telltale signals that we expect when we're at war, a public discourse about what the nation is trying to achieve, what success looks like. There hasn't been a Pentagon briefing about this since May. Despite this escalation in strikes, we haven't had a national address from the president, even though he addressed the nation last Thursday about what the aims are. And we're now hearing from the intelligence community that the apparent U.S. strategy of trying to put more pressure on Iran such that they capitulate on some of their demands to hold on to the strait isn't going to work. All the while, Iran is trying to do the same thing, raise the cost of the United States by attacking assets and now bases across the region. And so the question is the right one, because the hallmarks are all there, and yet the necessary components of what war is supposed to achieve haven't been addressed.
And I think the open question, too, of if strikes are not the thing that put the Iranians and the U.S. back at the negotiating table, what will, especially amid these fears of a broader and more ballooning conflict in the region, not just because of Iran itself, but because of its proxy groups like the Houthis.
That's right. I mean, we're starting to see problems in the Red Sea, the other transit that was used to get goods and services out. And you make a very important point in terms of where this is going writ large. We're seeing allied partners being attacked across the region. And so how does the U.S. reach a resolution? It's actually much harder now than it was before the Memorandum of Understanding. You'll remember that in June of last year, the United States was engaged with talks with Iran when the U.S. struck. In February, the United States was engaged in talks with Iran when it struck. And now there's this broken Memorandum of Understanding. So how do we get back to the negotiation table when both sides don't trust the process and believe that they have to actually get themselves better leverage before they come back to the table? It's ironic because the Memorandum of Understanding was supposed to lead to more clarity, but what instead, through some of the ambiguity in the language, actually created a new conflict over what it meant when it came to the Strait of Hormuz, and it's eroded trust in the very process that's supposed to end the war.
And didn't engage in any of the more complex issues like Iran's nuclear program or its support of proxy groups in that initial Memorandum of Understanding, which at this point is off the table. That's right. I think when you listen to the ways that the president is warning Iran about the deaths of U.S. service members and the fact that they will pay for them multiple times over, it mimics language that we heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who is going to be on Capitol Hill this afternoon testifying about this supplemental package of the Pentagon saying, hey, we need more money to continue funding this Iran war. And it leaves Congress on the hook. I've said this before, of having to approve money for a conflict that they themselves never got to approve. Not that there's the appetite to force that issue there. Right. But what do you imagine the questions are that Hegseth faces? And how does he greet them? Because he has been someone who has met pushback on Capitol Hill and skepticism from lawmakers with his own very active and bombastic pushback.
That's right. He's been very combative. I think we're going to see more of that because this will be their first opportunity to talk to him since the resumption of these strikes. He will appear with General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If past any sort of foreshadowing of what we're going to see, I think we're going to see a combative hearing, Democrats in particular aggressively pushing back. The other challenge is not only the question of how do you not fund troops during wartime, but the funding they're talking about is temporary. And so how do you make long-term planning for this conflict, which has no end in sight with only temporary funding? So even if they get the funds, we haven't addressed this underlying issue that we're talking about, which is what is the U.S. trying to achieve? And on what timeline is it prepared to invest to try to achieve it?
Yeah, I think that is an excellent question and likely one that Hegseth and Kane will have to grapple with. If they have an answer, I think that answer will be instructive. And yet I think one of the concerns among many from Democrats on Capitol Hill is this just going to be a drip, drip, drip of appropriations asks out of the Pentagon, which is already asking for its biggest budget ever in the regular appropriations process. Staff writer at The Atlantic, Nancy Youssef, you and I are going to be watching that hearing closely. Thank you for coming on this morning.